Sit down if you want to.
Right in the middle of what's going on.
I'm in the middle of an interrogation.
Take a seat, young Skywalker.
The middle children of history, man.
Middle of the day, Alfred?
Please, take a seat there.
Right now, I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Stop the middle, it's a base hit!
Meeting in the middle.
Like.
They fought for the freedom of middle.
The middle of a war!
In the middle of a war! This is freaking ridiculous!
Why don't we have a seat and talk it over?
No! Not the middle seat!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Middle Seats podcast, the best seat in the house for all things movies and entertainment, presented by Olive Garden. My name is Andrew Auger. I'm joined by Jake Hensler and Nate Lungarini.
We've been talking here in the Middle Seats off camera about how the movie selection has not been that great this year so far.
Understatement of the century.
But we're going to take advantage of the fact of the theater lull by catching up on some of our shows. So there's been a lot of stuff to catch up on, and one of those has been BoJack Horseman.
Yes.
Which is one of our collective group favorite shows, I'd go much to say. And it just wrapped up the second half of its final and sixth season. We wanted to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to break this up kind of like we would a review, where we're going to just go over our general thoughts of the show first, non-spoilers, and then we're going to get into a longer discussion about the final season and what we thought of it. So feel free to skip around in the time codes if you're interested in the show, but you don't want to be spoiled on the final season in case you still got to catch up on Netflix. All right, so just quick summary of the show. It stars a horse named BoJack Horseman, who's a washed-up 90s sitcom actor, is an alcoholic, has depression, basically just hates life and himself, and there's a whole bunch of zany characters that occupy his house, his work.
You know, I forgot how insane this show sounds. Just out
oh
of
my
context.
God, yeah, it's very, very weird. It has probably the weirdest first season. These guys were the ones that encouraged me to watch it in the first place. And the first couple of episodes seems very run-of-the-mill as like an adult animation, where like they're just making fun about, oh, he drinks and parties and smokes a lot, whatever. The roommate's high. That's the joke. There's a couple of moments like that in the first episode that just seem very run-of-the-mill. But over the course of the first season, especially the second half of the first season, it really kind of opens the door into what this show is. And on one hand, it's a deep show talking about a lot of serious mental health issues and how to like navigate life in that regard. And then on the other hand, it's a big satirical take that rivals South Park, I think, in terms of stuff that we tolerate in Hollywood society, in just society as a whole. It does a lot, and it covers a lot of ground.
It sounds like you're describing two separate shows, to be honest.
Exactly, and it all blends together. So I turned out to really, really love it after these guys recommended it to me. But I've been talking for too much. Guys, what do you think about BoJack Horseman as a whole?
Well, I would like to thank you guys for doing this, because I started BoJack kind of on a whim. I was looking for like a half-hour comedy to just throw on. I think I had just finished Friends and something else, and I was like, all right, I need a new half-hour comedy. What should I watch? And I was like, you know what? I've seen and heard some good things about BoJack Horseman. I'm not expecting a whole lot. I don't really know a whole lot about it. And I think it was at the end of season 1, end of season 2, and then into season 3 that I'm like, this is way more than I thought it was. And it is, honestly, it's outstanding. And just preliminary thoughts, it really has become, honestly, one of my all-time favorite shows, like up there with the greats in my opinion. I think it's just solely as a comedy, I think it's as funny as things like Parks and Rec, The Office, Friends, all those classics. It makes me laugh just as hard as those do. And then it balances some unbelievable story and character work in their arcs. 5 specific characters, I think 5. And then the themes they dive into, like Nate was saying, mental health, like depression, anxiety, self-destructive tendencies, addiction, childhood trauma, stardom, even just general society stuff. Like, they run the gamut of all kinds of crazy, difficult life situations, and they handle it pretty expertly in a way that I don't think anybody really expected, and they nail it on the head pretty much every time in a very like serious and deep life way, and in a brilliant comedic way. Like, they just crush it in an unbelievably balanced way, and I ended up absolutely loving it.
Yeah, my experience with it, you know, Netflix puts out like hundreds of shows every week. Like, I'm only exaggerating a little bit. Like, you can go to Netflix's homepage and you'll see like, oh, there's Fuller House and then 50 other shows that debuted on Friday. So like, obviously we don't have time for all of them. And just on a whim, I started BoJack Horseman the first week it was available.
Oh, wow.
I don't know what even drew me to it. It might have been Will Arnett. It might have been Alison Brie being attached to it. I was like, okay, kind of in the same way that you approached it, Jake, where I was like, I'm just looking for a good half-hour comedy. And this show's pivot has to be one of the biggest plot twists of the decade. Like,
it's wild.
It's really funny watching some post-mortem interviews from the show's creators because they almost say, we wanted to kind of surprise viewers the first season and kind of like dip your toe in the water.
No kidding.
Before throwing you in kind of thing of what this show was going to be about. But they're kind of expressed some regret to it now, saying we might have been even a little too secretive about it because a lot of the early reviews for this show, the first season, were mixed because they only saw the first 5 episodes and you didn't see
nothing happens,
where the show was going in the first 5. Yeah, you needed like, I think it was episode 7 or 8 where we really got to know like what BoJack is. And obviously it pays off in spades and it's one of the most acclaimed shows animated wise of recent times.
I think critically it really has become one of like the higher reviewed shows.
It's funny you say that, Nate, because I've been watching a lot of post-mortem stuff too, and it sounds like they didn't even really prepare the actors for what this is. Like, Will Arnett, it was either Will Arnett or Aaron Paul, they were talking about the experience of the first few table reads, and just like, like everybody looking at each other, just complete, like, I thought this was like a funny horse show, like, okay, we're going to talk about pill abuse and sex abuse and
like self-destruction
and overdose, self-destruction. Right. Like, can you imagine like Will Arnett going back to his agent and being like, what have you gotten me into? Like before anything had happened.
Like, I know I signed up for it, but this is not what I signed up for.
Right. It sounds like something that would be a bomb. It sounds like something we would talk about maybe in a loving way, like 30 years down the line when the cult nostalgia cycle comes back around to it. It very much could have not worked. Yeah. And I think the reason it works so well is because this show is so emotionally accepting of all of the different disorders. You know what I mean? It takes a look at BoJack is not a good. I was gonna say horse, but dude, let's talk about him in as far as like
guy
people. Yeah, he's not a good guy. He's got a lot of problems, but the show not once ever judges him for it. It immediately wants you to sympathize with him and wants you to want him to get better. And for a lot of people, it's like looking in a mirror watching this show. Like I haven't struggled with the severity of certain things that BoJack deals with, but there are a couple of episodes, and this isn't a spoiler. There's one episode that basically just is about how his head pushes negative thoughts into him.
I love that episode.
The episode is called Stupid Piece of Shit.
Great
in my
episode.
opinion, it's one of my favorite episodes. But it speaks to what a lot of people feel every day through this, like you said, completely zany and wacky animated show that is still hilarious and so satirical. You know what I mean? Like, it's the way that it's able to balance it is because it doesn't treat them like horses and cats. It treats them like human beings.
Yeah, that's why it works. Is they like these humans and animals live together, and it's not weird at all. Like, people are married to dogs and horses and owls, and it's just normal. That's the world we live in. They really nail it. And like Andrew was saying, one of my favorite things about this show is, had any of us done one of the really bad things BoJack has done, you would be haunted by that for forever. He's done a slew of really horrible things, like really horrible things. They don't say like, oh, it's okay, he didn't mean to. Like, your actions have consequences, but like you're still not just your mistakes. You're responsible for your actions, but you know, you try to be better. You try to be better every day.
Yeah, that's beautifully put.
That is one of my favorite things about the show that not a lot of TV does, is that the actions that the characters take, not just BoJack, but the entire cast, what they do carries over episode to episode, sometimes season to season. And little things, even like when one of the running gags in the first season is that the Hollywood D gets stolen.
Yeah.
And the entire community calls it Holly Woo because there's no more D at the end of the name. And that carries on through the entire show. All 6 seasons, it's Holly Woo. Now, you take that example and you apply it to all these little decisions that just carry over. And it's in a direct attack against the sitcom idea that it's kind of parodying, where episode resets at the end when the credits roll. It takes that concept and turns it on its head and says life keeps going. You don't get to pause, undo. There's no control Z here. What happened happened, and now the world has to move past that moment.
We're talking about big existential themes. Going off of what you're saying, here's what it boils down to. Life is going to hand you L's, and you're going to be allowed to feel despair, but it doesn't give you a right to quit. You have to get up and face yourself every day. And that's what BoJack struggles with, and all of these characters struggle with. And what we push him to, it takes him a while to realize that. And that's where the internal conflict comes. Beyond the conflict of him trying to reconnect with his career, the real conflict of the show is just him getting himself to a point where he likes himself.
Exactly.
Being able to live with himself.
Right.
Honestly. Because, like, I'd say what the show shows us, some of the most monumental bad decisions he makes are at the end of season 2 and at the end of season 3. No spoilers, you know what I'm talking about. And those all come back until the last episode. Those all come back to bite him in the ass. And that's pretty brilliant. Like, that doesn't happen in a lot of half-hour comedies. It just doesn't. They just kind of move on.
Definitely.
And they address it, and they show his consequences, and they show how he has to deal with it and try and be better. And it's remarkable character work.
Yeah, it's one of the most realistic shows I've ever watched, and it features talking animals.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
So we've kind of gone over the topical bits. I encourage everyone who has at least heard of this show or has listened to what we've said here and thought that might appeal to them, please check it out on Netflix. It is one of the most unique shows I've seen on television.
And be patient with it too. Like we were saying, it doesn't hit you immediately, but if you give it to like season 2, and if you still don't like it, obviously we don't agree, but you at least gave it a chance. But like you need to power through season 1, and then season 2 it really hits its stride.
Let's get a little bit more detail for those who have seen the show and have caught up on the last season. We're going to move on into spoiler territory now, into the final season. So spoilers from here on out.
Whoa! Oh, spoiler alert.
Spoiler! Spoiler!
Excuse me. Spoiler alert.
Let's start with Drew.
I mean, I would have actually been okay if that second to last episode, it would have been a really dark finale, but that second to last episode is one of the best half hours of TV I've ever seen. It's called The View from Halfway Down. And we've kind of danced around giving credit to the voice actors, I think. Will Arnett, this is the best thing he's ever done, in my opinion, and I'm a big Will Arnett fan.
He's very good as Lego Batman.
Yeah, exactly.
He really is.
I mean, like no bullshit. He's great as Lego Batman.
Yeah.
And he's really great in Arrested Development, but like this shows he's got dramatic chops too. Like there are different things that he's asked to do, especially in that episode, where it encompasses everything that the show has been to that point. I mean, that episode had me like gripped, and I was happy with the finale too. I think the finale is really strong.
Yeah.
But to me, that is where BoJack Horseman ended, and the finale is the epilogue to me.
Yeah, I agree with the epilogue-esque aspect of it. It kind of reminded me of Breaking Bad in a way, where its penultimate episode could have been the finale if they wanted to, but then they had the afterthought with its final episode, and both work as their own different endings.
Right, the last two of Breaking Bad, because Ozymandias is the third to last, and that to me is like
brilliant.
The climax of the whole show.
Yeah.
But then Granite State and Felina were very much, like you were saying, Nate. And then El Camino, of course, is an epilogue to an epilogue.
Yeah, we got to get there. The View from Halfway Down, I loved the Secretariat bit. I think that was the peak of that episode for me.
That poem has been all over the internet.
Yeah, that, like, the piece about someone pretending to be, like, okay with their suicide and like, I'm stronger than all this. I don't give a shit about all of this. Like, but then having that regret in his voice, because it's literally just an all vocal performance. There's no visuals to make it more emotionally resonant. It is just Will Arnett going through this motion in his head, and it's awesome. It's such a really, really deep, hard-hitting moment.
It's like, it's haunting and it's dark, and in a way it's like beautifully poetic at the same time.
Absolutely.
Just well voice acted and very well written. I mean, like most episodes, but that whole episode really is pretty haunting. And at first I was like, this is the big one, and I'm not getting the bigness of it. And then halfway through until the end was like, oh, holy shit. I was actually kind of scary. Like, that really hit you hard.
I didn't want to go on. I was like,
I was like, I have to watch another episode.
I need a break. Like,
yeah, I sat on my couch and just kind of like surfed BoJack internet for a little while.
I think the finale is really, really good about what Jake was talking about earlier, where it doesn't necessarily tidy everything with a nice little ribbon and kind of hand it off. You know what I mean? There are still consequences. Like, there's a very good chance that BoJack and Diane will never speak again after that night. There's a very good chance that BoJack and Mr. Peanut Butter will never... there's a chance that all of these characters are going to go their separate ways and never cross paths again. But he gets one final moment with each of them to at least come close to saying he's sorry. And the show is all about progress. You know what I mean? And that is a step forward. Hopefully he doesn't take a step back. That's for us to decide in our own heads.
I loved his moment with Diane and Princess Carolyn, but with Todd, he's afraid of relapsing again because he's like, I've been clean for, I think it's a couple months. And he's like, what if I relapse again? And he's like, so then you relapse again and you get clean. And that is the reality for a lot of harsh addicts. Like, they're haunted by their negative decisions and their troubles and everything that they've done. And when they're trying to be good, it could take dozens of times in rehab and getting clean for them to finally work out. And then sometimes it doesn't. And that is BoJack's reality. He has very broken relationships with almost everybody in his life, and he's got to face those consequences, but he's trying to be better. And that's just how they ended. That's where he is, and I think it's amazing.
It's contrasted really well with what happened with Sarah Lynn, because we get into Sarah Lynn's big tragedy is the only influence in her life was BoJack, who is the worst possible person. But BoJack has a chance because all of these people around him are like, even if he up so many times, even if they argue and clash and don't talk anymore, he knows he can call Diane again if he needs to.
In the last episode?
Like, if he really, really needs to.
You think that?
I think like the support group is there if he needs it. Like, absolutely needs it.
That's interesting. I took that as that being Diane and BoJack's final goodbye. I don't think they're ever going to speak again, period. I think that's it.
I think it's one of those things where if he was in an absolutely like dire need situation, or was like, hey, I'm on the ledge of a building, he could call her. But I think ultimately that's their...
But will she pick up is the question.
But that was the whole point of the finale. He did that, and she was already out of the picture.
I'm with Jake on this one. Like,
he tried to call her out of the pool.
I mean, I think this is their like we're not friends anymore.
How many times have they gone through that cycle through the course of the series? That's happened a couple of times.
Well, this one definitely felt more final.
I think that's Diane's growth, though, is cutting toxic people out of her life. And BoJack is without a doubt toxic. And she got the I'm trying to be better out of him, which is what she needed to hear to move on. And he's fully kind of realized that I've f***ed up this relationship enough that it's not fair to her to try to keep grasping at straws here. Like, that silence that she had when he asked if this was the last time they were going to speak spoke volumes. That was the moment for me. And it's sad, but I think it's healthy for the two characters, and that's the final goodbye there.
Especially Diane, yeah.
Yeah, let's take Diane out of, because this is getting away from my overall point. Let's take Diane out of the equation, because I think he could call Princess Carolyn and she would be there for him. Yes. I think he could count on Todd and he would be there for him. I think Mr. Peanut Butter would be there for him. I picked a bad person. My point is, he has a better chance than Sarah Lynn ever did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the flip side of that is definitely set in stone is what they did with Hollyhock's character. Like, she just flat out cut him out.
Yeah.
And I thought that was one of... It was heartbreaking, but that was real life.
Yes, made sense. I was like, damn, that sucks, but that makes sense.
She did not need BoJack in her life. She had 7 dads and didn't need to worry about trying to keep him in check as she wanted to live her life. So, yeah, it sucks, but cutting out a toxic person was the healthiest thing for her to do. And seeing that from BoJack's perspective of just the flat cut was heartbreaking. Real, but heartbreaking.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it sent him spiraling again for like the 19th time in the whole show. Right. But it's real.
Can you guys remind me, what was the deer's name? I can't remember her name currently. Penny. Yes.
Yeah.
And just to see like all of that come back to haunt him after like years of separation from it. Like, he's not that same dude anymore.
It's still actions have consequences.
Right, it's the whole the good, the bad, and the ugly, and taking lemons and making them into lemonade. Like, he's in prison at the end of the show, but in prison, he's running the drama club. You know what I mean? He's finding outlets of good to kind of progress who he is overall. And like, even if the situation isn't easy, you need to find, like, you know what, if the road is I'm just like talking in cliches all over the place, but if the road is bumpy, you can't just go find a different path. You can't drive on the grass. I'm just making them up now.
But your point stands.
You get my point, yeah.
Your point stands.
Really briefly, just highlights from other characters' arcs, because we've been talking a lot about BoJack, and obviously the show is about
Which
BoJack.
Which makes sense, yeah.
I fell in love with Princess Carolyn's character over the course of these past 6 seasons.
I think she's amazing, yeah.
She might be the best character written-wise in the whole show, in my opinion.
That's so hard. I would say her, Diane, and BoJack all have really brilliant character arcs from start to finish.
That are constantly changing, too. They never feel like they fully develop, which, again, is realistic. That's how life works. There's no tidy bows around any of them. But just seeing her grow from someone who feels so attached to toxic people to becoming her own successful person, but still never fully happy up until the finale. That was just so engaging to watch. Like, it's not even that I connected to her. It's just that I understood her plight and I wanted to see her do well. And it was so heartbreaking every time she didn't.
And I loved the Ruthie bits, both in the toward the end of season 4 and the beginning of season 6. Season 4 hit me like a truck.
Yeah, that episode is such like a wait for
it's just the last 30 seconds. Like, at first it's just an interesting episode, and the last 30 seconds is like if I watch it at 9 o'clock at night, I'm sitting in a dark room for a good 10 minutes. Like, God damn, that was really hard. But then they reverse it. I think it's season 6, episode 2. We're spoiling, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the whole idea behind Ruthie is that
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. He asked, "Are we spoiling after we spoiled the finale and the second to last episode?"
I know. I know, you're right.
Well, too late.
You're right. That's a really big.
Lordy.
Those are both really big episodes for me, character-wise. So I wanted to triple check. Okay. So the whole idea behind Ruthie is that she will never actually find happiness in her life, and it's a story she tells herself these happy stories to keep herself going, and it's really, really rough. But in season 6, the thing she wants to be a successful mother, and she's having trouble finding that relationship and getting a child, and she ends up adopting a baby and naming it Ruthie and kind of fulfilling that arc. And so she named the baby Ruthie, and there was a point, like, I didn't watch the next episode, and I was like, not choked up, but moved. I was like, this show, like, that is so beautiful. God damn it.
We've talked about this show for 25 minutes, and we have not once said who the creator of the show is. Raphael Bob Waksberg is his name.
God, whoever he is, thank God.
I'm letting you pronounce the name.
But we should put some respect on his name, because you guys talked about the complexity of the arcs for BoJack, Diane, and Princess Carolyn, and how they change as people. I want to talk about the two characters that don't change, yet still have a lot of emotional meaning, which is Todd and Mr. Peanut Butter. And their characters are pretty static overall. Like, obviously, things change about Todd. We learn he's asexual. We learn about his relationship with his mother. But overall, Todd is the wacky character.
Personality-wise, I think emotionally-wise, he definitely develops a lot. And I think Mr. Peanut Butter definitely does.
At the end, yes, Mr. Peanut Butter, it really does.
Mr. Peanut Butter is, he wants to be a people pleaser so bad. He wants to be so, like, universally liked. And he will, like, bend over backwards and create lies just to avoid any kind of, uncomfortable feelings.
Confrontation.
Yeah.
How long do him and Diane go back and forth circling divorce? Like, circling the idea of divorce, circling the idea that they just don't like each other, but he doesn't approach it because he tries to find so many things to distract himself with. She leaves the country to distract herself from the fact that their marriage isn't working. And he starts the Daniel Radcliffe show, which, great bit, by the way.
Love that.
What's the full title, Jake? You would know it.
It's like, celebrities, do they know things? What do they know? Let's find out. Or, yeah, whatever it is. Like, way too long.
He dives headfirst into that just so he doesn't have to face the feelings that something might be wrong in his life. And
which also is great because he's a golden retriever, and golden retrievers are positive at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way.
So it's just great.
And I just think they don't have as big and obvious and sweeping of arcs as the main trio that we talked about, the Holy Trinity of those characters. But all 5 of these characters experience change and have to experience hard things throughout the course of these 6 seasons. And I just appreciate when the show is so deep and it takes time to develop the characters that aren't just on the marquee.
For sure.
Mr. Peanut Butter does get a pretty big change, but only in the last season and a half. I think 1 through 4 and then parts of 5, he's just kind of this, like, a direct quote, everything's great as they always are from my perspective. Like, that's just who he is as a character, as a golden retriever.
He's inherently selfish, right.
And just, like, everything's upbeat no matter what. But I think the last season and the last half of season 5 is where we really start to, like, Peanut Butter's booze through all the Halloween parties. That episode is where we really start to find out, like, oh, you got some issues that you are not addressing, Mr. Peanut Butter.
For sure. Yeah, he's a fascinating character, too, just because he starts out as an obvious foil to BoJack, where, like, he loves his celebrity life, and BoJack hates it. And that kind of yin-yang thing between the two of them. But he's very much his own entity, I think, by the beginning of the 3rd season or so. But we still are engaged with his story. Even if you find him annoying like I did for the first half of the show, it's fun to be annoyed at him, and then you love him by the second half of the show, in my opinion. It's very complicated character work in a show with talking animals.
Right. Very, very. And also, we're talking about all the deep-rooted life moments because that's what this show brilliantly accomplishes, but I still think it holds its own as a comedy.
Oh, absolutely.
This show is laugh out loud funny every season.
Every episode.
The last half of season 6, I think ditches comedy a little bit.
Yes.
But as a whole, this show's so funny.
I think it's the finale of season 2 where everything that Mr. Peanut Butter and Todd have done throughout the course of the season, like, culminates in this natural disaster of,
like, spaghetti strainers, like,
and the spaghetti thing. Yeah, like,
with Margot Martindale.
I have never laughed so hard at TV before. Oh my god! And there's lots of crazy moments like that, and we haven't even talked about all the animal puns.
We haven't talked about the animal puns.
I adore.
Yeah, how unbelievably visually creative this show is too. Like, there are things on repeat episodes that I'm like, I never noticed that before. What a brilliant little detail they threw in there. I didn't see that the first time. Like, it's everywhere.
Yeah. When the show makes me laugh the most is when it is being extremely satirical and has its knives out and its teeth out to what's happening in the world. Like, I love the episode where BoJack accidentally becomes a feminist, basically by saying just, like, don't be mean to women. Right?
Yeah, like, don't beat women. And they're like, yeah.
He becomes a feminist. Right. And I love the gun control one where it's just
the
all
thoughts
about
and prayers
thoughts and
one
prayers.
Is great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
those are so incredible and ballsy.
It hits harder than a South Park episode in those moments.
Yeah, they're very topical. Like sometimes it takes shows a little while to catch up to things. They're pretty up to date, pretty consistently. It's very impressive.
Well, because a lot of the issues that it's covering have just been around for literal decades,
That's
and
true.
no one bats an eye to it.
That's true, and they address that as well. I love their whole Oscar thing too. Like, oh, Bradley Cooper, we love him for some reason. Let's write him in. Like, they make fun of everything in such smart ways.
I could be misremembering, but doesn't BoJack hologram win the Oscar, or like his like CGI recreation for Secretariat?
Well, yeah, his entire performance was CGI because he was in Arizona with Penny for the entire filming of the movie.
Yeah, he has another midlife crisis. So they CGI him, and he's like, it wasn't even me. And they're like, it doesn't matter. You were great.
Right. The chances the show takes, man. Like the experimental nature. Really quick, I want to name drop my favorite episode, which is Fish Out of Water.
One of my favorites, too. Unbelievable.
Like a silent Buster Keaton comedy. Just like the entire thing. Like, he can't talk because he's underwater, but it just is conveyed through visuals and music, and it's still hilarious, and it's touching. Like, what other show would do something like that? There's not a lot that would.
And it does it a lot. Like, there's Free Churro does a brilliant, unique
Free
kind of
Churro
thing.
is the complete opposite, where it's just one monologue for 23 minutes. And I think that's my favorite episode, because it is so gripping the entire time.
Building to an obvious but incredible punchline. Like, I knew that was coming, that he was going to be talking at the wrong wedding, but it still paid off, because they're all just looking at him like,
funeral,
what the
not
hell?
wedding,
like,
but yes.
Yeah, very different.
You could do a full hour on BoJack and not cover everything.
Yeah, I think we will wrap it up here, but just for record purposes, on the seat scale, where do we rate BoJack Horseman, gentlemen?
Goodness.
Starting with Jake. Final words and your rating.
Freaking royal throne that, like, I don't know, like Zeus could sit on in Olympus. Like, this is absolutely one of my favorite shows. I pretty much don't have a qualm with it. This is about, I think at its funniest, it's as funny as any show I've watched. And I think on a character, story, thematic, tackling real life situations level, I don't know that I've seen anything like it. It's the way it tackles depression and anxiety and addiction, childhood trauma, all, everything we've already talked about is, I think, pretty unparalleled. Like, Breaking Bad does addiction and self-destruction very well. This does that and more. Like, it's just unbelievable, the character work that they do for horses and dogs and owls and cats and whatever else. Like, it's just absolutely incredible. This is one of my favorite shows of all time currently.
Do you need a napkin to clean yourself off? Are you okay?
You knew this was coming.
I did, yeah.
It's also the surprise factor, because I started this show randomly, and I could not believe how much I fell in love with it over the course of 6 seasons.
Yeah. It's a royal throne for me, too. It's tough to rate TV shows, I think.
Yeah.
Because they're so much more comprehensive, and, like, do you not give it a royal throne if there was, like, a 3-episode span where you were, like, this is good, not great. You know what I mean? Like, how do you do it? But overall, what it accomplishes, it deserves a royal throne. I don't know if it's one of my favorite shows ever. I think I'm in like the lower end of the three of us, but it's still a royal throne to me. The only thing I would say is that I don't know if I'll be rewatching it as frequently as I know the two of you do.
Yeah.
I still love it, obviously, and I respect what it is and adore everything that it's able to do emotionally and comedically. The emotional punches, will it hit as hard the second time around? And that's why I think I'm a little reluctant to go back.
Well, I've rewatched that underwater episode 3 or 4 times, and I'm wowed every time. So I think that does happen for me.
Which bodes well for it if I do decide to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I'll just cut to the chase. It's another royal throne, so this TV show is a certified golden throne from the Middle Seats podcast.
Whoop.
Like, comparing it to some of my other all-time favorite TV shows, like Futurama and Scrubs, all 3 of those shows are primarily comedies that delve into deeper issues here and there and make it better. BoJack is kind of like the inverse, where it primarily is focusing on the emotional journeys of these characters, but still has the comedy to back it up. And I think finding a show like that strikes the balance this well and is this smartly written is a rare but beautiful thing to come by. So I thoroughly encourage anybody to watch BoJack Horseman. and give it a shot, because it is great, and it's definitely going to be one of my all-time favorites, I think.
So if you guys haven't gotten the hint, watch BoJack Horseman. If you haven't.
Pretty great.
Yeah.
That'll do it for this portion of the Middle Seats podcast. If you would like to listen to our Sonic the Hedgehog review, it is in a separate video, which you can find on our channel. Of course, you can follow us on all social media. You can find us on anywhere that podcasts can be listened to. For Jake Hensler and Nate Lungarini, I'm Andrew Ojay. Keep that seat warm, everyone. We'll be back soon.